This clash
situation, isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dewbs & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I think for far too long in this country, millions of people felt as though they weren't represented at all by the establishment media.
GBNews was needed because there literally was no other voice. Everyone was saying the same thing.
GBNews exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GBNews came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
But journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
Charlie Peters, he gave a voice to the victims of grooming gangs, and now, of course, it's led to a national inquiry.
GBNews exists to make sure those concerns are put forward and people feel as though what they want to ask is put to those in power.
We don't take orders from anyone. We ask the questions our viewers and listeners want answering.
I know what's actually being discussed by my family and my friends.
Us ordinary, hard-working British people have had enough. We've had enough.
They're fed up with the same old establishment nonsense. Everything that we do is opening up conversations that others are afraid to go at.
Why are you illegally bringing people into Britain?
That is our job. Our job is to get to the truth.
If it's important to you watching or listening at home, then it's important to us as well.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight, check your sheds, ladies and gents, because we have got not one, but two convicted criminals currently on the run with massive manhunts underway. As get this, multiple criminals have been let out of prison accidentally. Again, this is so pathetic that I'm tempted to laugh, but no, this is serious. How on earth has this happened, and what on earth does it say about the state of our justice system? Ladies and gents, we have a lot that we need to explore tonight. And keeping me company to do just that, my panel tonight, I've got Reform UK councillor Layla Cunningham and left-wing commentator and Green councillor Martin Abrams. Also, lots of other guests along the way as well. But before we get stuck in, here are your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. The top stories. Police are hunting another prisoner who's been accidentally released from HMP Wandsworth. Surrey police have put out an appeal to find 35-year-old Billy Smith, who was released in error on Monday. Smith was sentenced to 45 months for multiple fraud offences at Croydon Crown Court on Monday, during which he appeared via a live video link from HMP Wandsworth. He has links to Woking but could be anywhere in Surrey, the force said. Well, that's as the 24-year-old Algerian man mistakenly released from prison in London has been named as Brahim Kadour Sharif. He was wrongly freed from HMP Wandsworth on the 29th of October, but the error wasn't reported to police until nearly a week later. It's been confirmed he is not an asylum seeker but was serving time for trespass and has previously committed sexual offences. He entered the UK legally on a visit visa in 2019 and has now overstayed the visa. It's the second blunder in less than 2 weeks after convicted sex offender Hadoush Kabatu. It is now the third blunder after Hadoush Kabatu, was accidentally released from Chelmsford Prison. The news broke after Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge pressed Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy in the House of Commons on whether any asylum seekers had been mistakenly released since Hadoush Kabatu last month. Mr Lammy dodged the questions, instead accusing the Conservatives of leaving Britain's prison system in chaos.
They left our prisons on the brink of collapse entirely, threatening to allow offenders to run wild on our streets. He knows that. Rape victims waiting years for their day in court. He knows that. Neighbourhood policing decimated, leaving our people feeling unsafe in their communities, and they haven't learned a thing.
Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has called Mr Lammy's actions disgraceful.
Deputy Prime Minister gave disgraceful answers. He, in my view, was dishonest with Parliament and with the country, because we're now told that as he was asked 5 times about the mistaken release of foreign offenders, he had in his folder, in his papers, a briefing about this man, this Algerian man, who was mistakenly released 6 days ago from Wandsworth Prison. And instead of being honest with the public and honest with Parliament and telling us about that, instead, he chose to hide it, he chose to shout, he chose to bluster, instead of being straightforward and honest. So I think, I'm afraid, the Deputy Prime Minister's performance at PMQs today was nothing short of disgraceful.
Prison sources say it would have been irresponsible for David Lammy to discuss the situation during PMQs, despite being informed about it overnight, describing the case as incredibly complex and involving multiple agencies, with details still emerging. Downing Street has called the incident utterly unacceptable, saying the circumstances will be forensically examined as part of Dame Lynn Owen's review into wrongful releases. David Lammy says he's absolutely outraged and appalled by the mistake, confirming an urgent manhunt's underway and vowing to leave no stone unturned in fixing what he calls deeper flaws in the criminal justice system. Some breaking news now. Police and prison services are investigating the death of an inmate at the maximum security HMP Wakefield in West Yorkshire. The incident comes less than a month after the former Lost Prophets singer Ian Watkins was stabbed to death at HMP Wakefield. A West Yorkshire police spokesperson said investigations into the man's death are in their early stages and inquiries are being carried out. Elsewhere, 2 men from Nottinghamshire and West Yorkshire have been charged with planning to commit an act of terrorism. Mohammed Bam and Oliver Ree are accused of attempting to leave the UK and join up with the Islamic State terror group. Both men will appear at Westminster's Magistrates Court tomorrow. Elsewhere, Donald Trump says election results in the US aren't good for Republicans after Democrats swept the first major elections of his second term. Zohran Mamdani wins the New York City mayoral race, and Democrats also clinched key governor races in Virginia and New Jersey. 34-year-old Mamdani becomes New York City's first Muslim mayor and youngest person in over a century to lead the largest city in the US.
Throughout this campaign, I have worked hard to be accessible and transparent with New Yorkers. That same spirit will animate this transition and the city hall we build, because New Yorkers deserve a government that they can trust. And on January 1st, when our city celebrates the inauguration of a new administration, let us also celebrate a new era for our city, one that we all feel invested in and whose success we all work to achieve.
Those are the latest headlines. For now, it's over to Michelle.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Thank you very much for that, Tatiana. My name is Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, I've got Reform UK councillor Leila Cunningham, and alongside her, left-wing commentator and Green councillor Martin Abrams. Good evening to both of you. You're very welcome tonight. Good evening. Oh, there was so much I had planned to talk about tonight, ladies and gents. I wanted to talk about what happened in New York. Did you see that? The rise of socialism or communism, depending on where you sit on the political spectrum. So much that we had to get into, but no, because they've done it again. You will all remember the debacle of what happened. Was it only last week where that migrant got released accidentally from prison? Was him just wandering around in a tracksuit with his avocado bag and a manhunt underway. Apparently it was never going to happen again. Well, this week it has. Not once, but twice. As we speak, there are manhunts underway. So go and check your sheds at the time that I go to a commercial break, ladies and gents, because they could be out there. You never know. You can join the conversation information in all the usual ways. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yourself. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me. But look, I want to unpick so much of this because I cannot understand how this has happened again so soon, of course, after that mess. Without further ado, let me cross live to our reporter, Charlie Peters. Good evening to you, Charlie. You are live from Wandsworth Prison. Bring our viewers up to speed.
Well, Michelle, this Category B prison is facing humiliation tonight after it's revealed today that 2 offenders have been accidentally released from the prison in the last week. The first prisoner, a foreign national Algerian, Karim Badur Sharif, released last Wednesday accidentally, despite being a sex offender who has overstayed his visa since February of 2020. So he's currently an illegal migrant and facing a significant manhunt being led by the Metropolitan Police. But then we also learnt earlier today that a 35-year-old called William Smith, also known as Billy, who was sentenced on Monday at Croydon Crown Court to multiple fraud offences, appeared via live link from Wandsworth, but was then released even after facing that 45-month imprisonment, that sentence being handed down on Monday. So serious humiliation for the prison service, but a lot of that being led by the Justice Secretary, David Lammy. And there are, I think, fears inside the prison service that once again, Mr. Lammy is putting the blame squarely at them, as occurred after Hadush Gabatu, the Ethiopian sex offender, was accidentally released from HMP Chelmsford on October the 27th, towards the end of last month. David Lammy said he'd introduced stringent checks after that error, but this early release of the Algerian occurred just 2 days after those new checks were introduced. Now, the Prison Officers Association appeared livid when Mr. Lammy appeared to single out one member of the prison staff, putting them on suspension after that error in Essex. I think we could see similar anger from the rank and file today, because of course this prison behind me, this Category B, this Victorian prison, has been in crisis for some time. A report released just last month found that on some days there are just 85 staff in charge of the some 1,400 prisoners being kept in the cells behind me. And David Lammy, of course, has said that he was unable to provide an update to the House of Commons earlier today because this was a complex and multi-agency investigation. That was what Justice sources told us earlier. That's been received very negatively by political opposition, who said that transparency is key. Well, he's been given a 6-day head start, but that's according to the Metropolitan Police when it comes to the early release of Brahim Kadur Sharif. But really, Michelle, it's a 7-day head start, because while the Met were involved in launching that operation yesterday at 1 o'clock, it's the public's awareness and involvement that's going to be crucial to the rearrest and the focus on getting this Algerian national back into custody. It was a member of the public's report that led to Hadush Gabatu being rearrested at Finsbury Park 2 Sundays ago. And now finally we have some footage of his arrest from September earlier this year. That footage now being circulated by the Metropolitan Police, as they are appealing anyone to come forward with information, as are Surrey Police for 35-year-old Billy Smith, who was sentenced to prison on Monday and accidentally released from prison on Monday.
I mean, I don't even know if I dare ask this question because, you know, I would like to hope and think that the answer is just going to be a straight no. But do you actually think we could have any more people that have been accidentally released that we're not yet aware of, Charlie?
Well, Michelle, it's highly likely. In the year March 2020 to March 2025, 262 prisoners were accidentally released. That was almost double from the previous year, when 115 were accidentally released. Those figures compiled by the Prison and Probation Service at an average of about 5 a week. This is now the 3rd day of the week, and so far we're already at 2. So watch this space.
This as well. Why did it take, I mean, when we got the news of the second guy, we almost got a mugshot of him almost instantaneously. The first guy, it took much longer. Why?
It's a good question, Michelle. The Metropolitan Police, I think there is some anger in Scotland Yard today at the way that the Justice Secretary has described the process, indicating through sources that he was unable to make that statement earlier today because of the complex multi-agency approach. It's understood that the Met Police were eager to put out more information earlier. That's being reported by The Times, and they had no intent whatsoever to prevent the Justice Secretary from releasing his statement earlier. So clearly some briefing going on between the police and the Justice Secretary at the moment. Clarification hopefully to come soon on why that information was delayed. But it was frankly ridiculous, and local residents here were saying the same to us earlier, Michelle, that we knew a 24-year-old foreign national sex offender had been released accidentally from prison. We knew his name, we knew his age, but we didn't have footage of him to help circulate to the people.
Interesting stuff. Oh, there you go. Look, another van load making their way inside. I remember actually, I was walking past that prison, and it was one of the previous. Do you remember when they let them out previously? The scenes of jubilation. I remember from loved ones that were getting their men returned to them early. I found it such a strange thing to witness, I can tell you. But anyway, I shall leave you there. You will be watching proceedings as they continue, and you'll come back to us with an update. But for now, Charlie Peters live from Wandsworth Prison there. Thank you very much. We've got lots that we need to unpack, ladies and gents. Shortly on in the programme, I will be asking a prison governor to walk us through this process. How does this actually happen? How does a random criminal go from 1 minute laid on his bed doing, I don't know, probably TikToks or whatever it is that they do with their smuggled-in mobile phones these days, to the next second they're somehow being released? Who is responsible? What is that process? Where are the points of failure? And how on earth have we got ourselves into this situation where it's happened multiple times? I'll come to that, but before I do, Layla Cunningham, your initial response to this whole mess?
Did I hear correctly that the Prime Minister was only informed now? 6 or 7 days after?
Well, you know, we are going to come to... I've got a political reporter joining us after one of the other breaks as well to get into the twists and turns of this, because I don't know if any of you saw the debacle again. I mean, we've just had... It's been Clanwell today, ladies and gents. The PMQs, did you see how that all unfolded? There's a lot of toing and froing here about who knew what when. David Lammy seems to be getting thrown under the bus, I would suggest, by a very furious Met Police, and we will get some interesting details over the coming days on this, I think.
But what's interesting to me is that one of them is an Algerian national who has committed sexual offences before. Why is he not on a plane back to Algeria? We give foreign aid to Algeria, and foreign aid should be dependent on compliance and cooperation. And the thing is, I have dealt with many cases actually where I've been in court and I've had something similar, where someone's had a deportation order, and I've had an email from immigration and they've told me, please, can you remand him in custody? But we have a serious problem. The Bail Act, which is the legislative instrument that allows us to remand someone in custody, does not explicitly state immigration or deportation measures. So when you ask a judge, he goes, well, what condition under the Bail Act? And those are commit further offences, interfere with witnesses, amongst many others, or no community ties. You know, he might not surrender to court, but deportation is not in there. So it is very hard to remand them in custody. And like he said, to remand them in custody for deportation matters, and they get lost in the system. And your reporter did mention complex multi-agency approach, and he's not wrong. Immigration and the prosecution do not communicate and do not work in cooperation, and that is a big problem. I've had many of these cases where I couldn't remand someone in custody who had a deportation order. But on another note, this country is crying out for leadership. We're tired of sorries. We're tired of reviews. We're tired of saying, you know, next time we'll get it right, because every blunder puts us in danger. That man is roaming around London now.
I mean, I don't want to... I'm not going to laugh anyway because it's a serious matter, but there is a small part of me, and I'm sure there's probably a small part of you as well. You get to the point now in society where it is like some kind of sketch show. We had the other day that fella that was on the not-so-small boat got sent back to France. He then came back. You almost want to laugh at that. You then had the guy that was released accidentally, having created absolute carnage and mayhem when it came to all of those hotel protests. You had him meandering along the streets with his avocado bag and his tracksuit on. It is literally laughable. And as we've just been hearing, as a reaction to that last accidental release, stringent controls were supposed to be in place. This has happened, apparently, since said stringent control. It's pathetic. Martin?
Well, it's an absolute shambles, isn't it? But we need to look at the context of this. 262 prisoners released accidentally in the last recorded year. That's more than a 100% increase, as Charlie said in his report. But if you look over the past 20 years, there's been more than a 20% real terms cut in funding to prisons, and they were all waived from, voted for by the Conservative government over 14 years. This has absolutely decimated our prison and our justice service, and as a result, today we've got prisoners that are being released accidentally. I mean, the shambles of that prisoner in Chelmsford Prison when he was released accidentally. Apparently, he went back to the prison after he was released to ask the prison guards at the desk what's going on, why have they been released?
Apparently he was asking
and they told him
directions
they told him to go to the train station. And this is what happens. There is a multi-agency approach because some of these prisoners are being sent to detention centres to then be deported. And we don't know whether that's the case with what happened at HMP Wandsworth. That's what was happening with the prisoner at Chelmsford. But when that kind of breaks down, as clearly is so often happening, this is what happens. What we are lacking here is accountability. It's not good enough just to blame the prison officers here or prison governor. We need accountability right at the top of government for this because it is a shambles. I think David Lammy is walking on really, really dodgy ground at the moment because the buck should stop with him. He had a shocking performance in Prime Minister's questions today. I really do think he's in a little bit of trouble.
There's never accountability, is there? They just say sorry. They just say we're going to review it. We're going to have a committee, and no one ever gets fired. And it's only the British public that's in danger. There's never accountability.
I think you're right.
It's the same with the rape gangs. It's the same with this adoption scandal where they force young girls to get adoption. Nobody ever loses their job, and it's only the public that suffers.
I can tell you now, apparently, David Lammy, he says he's absolutely furious about all of this. He says, and I quote, "I'm absolutely outraged and appalled by the mistaken release of a foreign criminal wanted by the police. The Metropolitan Police is leading an urgent manhunt, and my officials have been working through the night to take him back to prison. Victims deserve better, and the public deserve answers," he says, and that's why I've already brought in the strongest checks ever to clamp down on such failures and ordered an independent investigation led by Dame Lynn Owens to uncover what went wrong and address the rise in accidental releases, which has persisted for too long. This is the longest statement ever. This latest incident exposes deeper flaws across the failing criminal justice system that we inherited, and Dame Lynn Owens' investigation will leave no stone unturned to identify these issues so that we can fix them, improve safeguards and ensure the public is properly protected. Well, as I said at the start of the programme, I'm coming up to commercial break now, so get yourself out into your back gardens, have a little look in your sheds, check that you've got no undesirables in there, and I'll see you guys back in a few minutes.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Leila Cunningham and Martin Abrams alongside me as we try to get to the bottom of what on earth is going wrong in our justice system. One of my viewers, David, says, Michelle, all prisoners should have some form of chip in their arm, the way that we do with pets. You'd be able to locate them in a nanosecond. David, I've got to say, good luck trying to get that one across the line, I can tell you that. Tony says, Michelle, so many people keep saying about blaming previous people, whoever that is, Tories, Labour, whoever. But now we've got a new government we have had for many, many months. So now the time for blame has long gone. They do it on every single subject, I've got to tell you. Another Tony has said, Michelle, this is nothing to do with cuts, but this is all to do with pure people incompetence. How on earth can you release somebody by mistake? Well, Tony, you've just queued up my next guest very well because I'm joined by the former prison governor and Reform UK's justice advisor, Vanessa Frick. Vanessa, thank you very much for joining Dewbs & Co, talking to my viewers. Tony, my viewer, just asked the question, how does this happen? Now, can you just walk my viewers through the process of someone getting released in this way? How does a convict go from laying on his bed doing whatever he does in his own cell to somehow accidentally, wrongly, being on the other side of the gates?
Good evening, Michelle. Well, let me tell you the walk through. Okay, so 14 days before the prisoner is due for release, a sentence calculation is done, and that's checked by a manager. The day before the release, that is checked by should be the duty governor. On the day of the release, on lock, the prisoner is identified. Usually now they have ID cards, and he's ID'd and taken to receptions. Upon receptions, his discharge paperwork is gone through with him, and his conditions of release, and then he's placed into a holding room. Then a custodial manager will go through his paperwork again, identify him again, and he's walked to the gate. At the gate, the gate staff should identify the prisoner, look at the paperwork and say, yes, he's for release, and release that prisoner. So as you can see, there's tumultuous checks already in place. But David Lammy said last week, correct me if I'm wrong here, Michelle, that he had introduced a 5-page document that would stop all this, and yet it's happened again.
So, but you see, what you just explained then, there seems to be what you just basically call multiple points of failure. It seems to me like multiple different individuals, multiple different teams, multiple different levels of seniority within an organisation. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how can every single one of those people, it seems, have made a mistake? How is that even possible? Is it something on the source material, the source data that they're all checking that is wrong? Where is the origin of this mistake, in your view?
I would suggest that it's in the original sentence calculation. If he was for deport, he'd overstayed his visa, overstayed his welcome in this country, he would be for deport. Therefore, he would be eligible for release after 30%. Don't forget, Michelle, last September, this government introduced a very complicated, complex early release scheme that, unbeknown to everybody who is not related to a prison, has found very difficult. I'm not making excuses for the prison service, certainly not. But I'm certainly not making excuses for this government either.
So then earlier on in the programme, Vanessa, we were talking about accountability. People on my panel were saying that that is exactly what we need, accountability. Where does the buck stop in your mind? But with who? With David Lammy. Look, he stood last week and said he's introduced this 5-page document that was going to stop all this. When he stood in PMQs, and I happened to be watching PMQs today, he failed to answer the question 5 times. All I want from any government is honesty and transparency. He provided neither. And well, that to me... So what would you do then to stop all of this?
Well, what I do, I think the prison service needs to go back to basics. I think we need to look at vetting. We need to look at who comes into the prison service. We need to look at training. We need to look at overcrowding. We need to look at the infrastructure of our prison service, because most of our jails, including Wandsworth, is an old Victorian jail that is no longer fit for purpose. But nobody's interested in that. They just make a few ad hoc suggestions here and there and expect the whole system to work. And that's never going to happen, Michelle. And look, just one more thing. We had 262 releasing errors last year. Did anybody query it? Did the MOJ query it? How it had gone up by 130%? No.
In a second, I'm going to debate something else that's connected to this, and this is whether or not, because we all know that the state of prisons, it is dire. Prison officers, should they be allowed to strike?
Look, I striked once when I was at Holloway back in the 80s for 7 weeks. I found it, we went back in worse conditions than when we came out. I don't believe in prison officers striking. I don't believe in police striking. I think we're a public service, and that prison officers, the same as the police, protect the public, and that's what we should do. And I don't think that striking helps that.
Interesting stuff. That's Vanessa Frick, the Reform UK's Justice Advisor and former prison governor. Thank you for your time. This point about prison officers being able to go on strike, do you think they should?
Absolutely, 100%. Since 1994, prison officers have been banned from having the right to strike. Their right was repealed under the Criminal Justice Public Order Act. And since then, what we've seen is the conditions in prisons spiral into what we see today, which is an absolute shambles in terms of prisoner release, accidental release. Conditions for prison officers are horrific. The amount of violence inflicted by inmates on prison officers is horrific. And if they did have the right to take industrial action in particular prisons or as a collective, then that would encourage the government as their employer to make conditions in those prisons better. And then that would subsequently mean that conditions in terms of prisoners' release would be better. You know, because there's a phrase for trade unionists, if you're not bargaining, you're begging. And that's what unfortunately prison officers have had to face for the last 30 years.
But Vanessa, someone with experience on the front line though, she's just turned around and said she went on strike, and when she got back, the place was in a worse mess than when they'd left. So what would be your solution in your utopian world when all of these people are standing on picket lines waving their pieces of cardboard? What's occurring inside the prison?
Going on strike is an absolute last resort. In terms of industrial action, there's things they can do in terms of action short of a strike.
But we're talking on strike. When they're on strike, waving the cardboard outside the gates, what's going on inside the gates?
Well, listen, I don't actually know when the last time prison officers did go on strike in terms of before 1994 when they lost that right. But if you have that...
She went on strike and it was a worse mess when she got back to work.
If you have that negotiating tool in your back pocket, conditions improve. If you don't, conditions worsen.
You know, my question is, if you're outside the gates chanting with your pieces of cardboard, what is happening inside? I know what's happening in worse. it will be carnage inside. The gangs will be all over the place, and you'll come back to worse conditions you started with.
Listen, in terms of strikes, when other services go out on strike, the whole thing does not suddenly stop. We saw ambulance drivers go out on strike a couple of years ago. That didn't mean that there were no ambulances. It's about taking industrial action that causes a bit of disruption, not a total cease of function.
When you wear that uniform as a prison guard, you hold the keys to public safety, literally. And Michelle's point is when officers walk out, it's not a condition dispute anymore. It's a national security risk. You cannot have terrorists, murderers, rapists being guarded by temps. Because when officers strike, the public, it's not just an inconvenience like the ambulance, they're endangered. And that's why we don't have strikes in the military or the police for the same reason, because you can't just switch off law and order. You can't tell the criminals in prison, hold off for 2 days while we strike. And listen, it's a very honourable job, and the nation owes them a lot. But the problem with you and most of the left, you think that holding the country to ransom is always the answer, but it's not.
No,
the problem is that the Conservatives let in 6.5 million people and built about 450 prisons extra, which doesn't even touch the surface. And instead of building more prisons, they basically let out dangerous criminals. We saw that one went on to kill. And that's the problem. We have successive governments that have not only deprioritised public safety, but they've deprioritised it so much that they've endangered the public. It was never a priority, and we need now a government that understands our fears, our concerns, and doesn't just belittle them. We don't need another investigation. And David Lammy says he's going to investigate. They always investigate the workers. What about investigating the ministers? They never get investigated for their failures.
Well, there you go. You'll have strong opinions. Prison officers, do you think they should be able to go on strike? Perhaps you are a prison officer watching this programme. What's your thoughts on it all? Did you see PMQs today? It was farcical. I've got to say, I don't think either of them come out very well, but we'll take a look at that after the break.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Heavy downpours likely over the northeast of Spain and southern France over the course of Thursday. Some showery rain also for the Greek islands, particularly Corfu. Much of Italy looking fine with some autumn sunshine in Rome. There's that heavy rain just clearing away from Barcelona, but bringing some downpours to the south of France. Showery rain also clearing away from the Balearics. Much of southern Spain dry and sunny. Small chance of a shower or two over the Canaries. They should be clearing away as we head into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It is very mild out there for bonfire night. Clear spells, yes, but some showery rain, increasingly so by dawn. However, not nearly as wet as it has been in some places so far this week. We've still got low pressure in charge. That's bringing this mild southerly airflow. It's also pushing the more persistent rain into parts of northern and central Scotland. The rain, though, turning more showery as the night wears on. Those showery outbreaks most likely in the north and the west. Further east, we keep mostly dry and clear weather. But whether you've got the clear skies or the cloud or the rain, it's going to be a mild start to Thursday. Temperatures remaining in the mid-teens in places. It's also a cloudy start for many, particularly across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, where there'll be some outbreaks of rain. Clear spells further south, some sunshine first thing, but areas of cloud and some showers starting to spread back into parts of the south and the west of England and Wales. Best chance of some sunshine, I suspect, will be across North Wales and Northern England before we get into this cloudier zone through Scotland and Northern Ireland, although some cloud breaks are likely for the northeast of Scotland as first band of rain clears Shetland. Then on Thursday afternoon, well, it's a real mixed bag out there. Areas of cloud and showers, some heavy downpours for parts of West Wales into the southwest, eventually pushing into Northern Ireland, northwest England and southwest Scotland. One or two showers elsewhere, but mostly dry with some sunny spells and with light winds, feeling pleasant in the sunshine with temperatures at 17, even 18 Celsius. Showers from the word go on Friday, but also decent chance of some sunshine, especially in central and eastern parts, ahead of this system that brings some heavy and persistent rain in from the west and southwest into Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest of England, clearing through by the time we start off the weekend. So Saturday looking like the best bet for dry and fine weather.
Thank you, Britain, for helping us reach 8 million followers across social media. Thank you for making us a part of your daily life.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M74 southbound between Junction 1A Polmady and Junction 2 Cambuslang Road, Lane 3 is closed due to a collision causing delays. The M60 anti-clockwise in Rochdale has 40-minute delays. In Derbyshire, the A38 southbound between the A50 and A5132 faces 20-minute delays. Norfolk drivers experienced disruptions on the A11 southbound due to a lane closure from a collision. And on the trains, Transport for Wales advises not to travel between Landrindod and Swansea due to disruptions. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, Lila Cunningham and Martin Abrams. Lots of you, Nigel saying, please can you explain to me how, quote, a lack of money has resulted in the prison service wrongly releasing prisoners. A delay to releasing or whatever I can understand, but letting out the physical wrong people, says Nigel, is absolutely indefensible. So many people kind of got their head in their hands at the moment. We've just been talking about striking as well. Paul, one of my viewers, says, Michelle, I've worked in the military for nearly 40 years. We can't go on strike, and even if we could, I wouldn't. We are public servants, he says, who are responsible for security to the population, as are prison staff. Lots of you are saying we've just got a comedy of errors right now and that actually it's time for David Lammy to resign. I can tell you now, if David Lammy was here, he would dispute that he's been responsible for any of these errors. But if you didn't see it, get yourself comfortable and take a look at this. This was the absolute farce that was PMQs this afternoon.
Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison?
Of course I apologise, and I'm sorry.
I'm going to ask him the question again. Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison? It's a very specific question for him to answer.
I put in place the toughest checks we've ever had in the prison system.
Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison?
I know I'm the Justice Secretary, that's why I'm at the dispatch box, also as Deputy Prime Minister.
Can he reassure the House that since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison?
I've got to tell you, I spent 14 years in opposition, and I did a hell of a lot better than he's just done.
Since Kabatu was released, no other asylum-seeking offender has been accidentally let out of prison. Can he answer the question?
I'm looking forward to being up against the member for Newark next time.
Honestly, it was an absolute farce, and don't even get me started on what actually happened with his poppy or lack of that actually emerged halfway through. But anyway, Nigel Nelson, senior political commentator, joins me now. Nigel, talk to me about the politics of this, because there's going to be quite a bun fight taking place now about these mistaken prisoner releases. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you just showed the clip of Prime Minister's questions. The problem there was that James Cartledge, the Shadow Defence Secretary, did not ask the right question. Had he simply put to David Lammy, has someone been released, David Lammy would have had to answer yes. Now, we didn't know any of that at the time when we were in the House of Commons. What it looked like was an elephant trap being set by the Tories, which they bungled completely. And as I say, just ask the wrong question. Now, what James Cartledge could have done is given the information that he had after question 2, and again, David Lammy would have had to answer it. We know that David Lammy had a statement ready to go. The reason David Lammy didn't want to volunteer it is he was concerned about the police investigation that was taking place, and everything was moving so quickly. Now, in retrospect, we're now sort of 6 hours on. In retrospect, probably David Lammy should have come clean and said, yes, somebody has actually been accidentally released. But in the hot and bother of Prime Minister's questions, he didn't go down that route.
Yeah, but look, apparently the Met Police have come out and said that they would have had, quote, no issues with David Lammy confirming the accidental release of this guy.
Well, that's fine. That's all come later. We're actually dealing with a situation that happened just after midday. So David Lammy didn't have those reassurances at that point. Now, I'm not saying it's right. It's an instant judgment you've got to make. In retrospect, I think it would have been better had David Lammy said, to James Cartledge, yes, I know exactly what you're getting at. This is what has happened. He didn't have to go into a huge amount of detail, which he didn't have at the time, but he could have at least admitted a prisoner had been released accidentally.
Many of my viewers are saying that actually they hold David Lammy personally accountable for, yet again, mistaken releases of criminals because he was the one that was talking about stringent checks. Some of my viewers are suggesting that essentially now his position is untenable and that he should resign. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the first thing you've got to consider is why we ended up with an early release system in the first place, and that was because prisons were at bursting point, and if you hadn't released a load of prisoners, we couldn't have actually put any more inside. So the reason we're in the situation we're in is because we haven't built enough prisons over the last 20-odd years. Tony Blair didn't build enough prisons. Boris Johnson promised that 20,000 more prison places will be created. He created 5,000. So that's why the whole prison estate is in a mess at the moment. Yes, of course, that people should not be released accidentally. I mean, that's quite clear. And yes, David Lammy now bears ultimate responsibility for that. But it is actually years of underfunding, years of not doing what should be done. More prisons are now going to be built because planning restrictions are going to be changed to make sure they are, although people living next door to them are about to complain.
Yeah, but you just said ultimately this is the buck stops essentially with David Lammy, so I'll ask my question again. So should he go then?
No, because the situation that he's found himself in is 20-odd years in the making. That's why he shouldn't go. He's now trying to address it. If in a year's time this is still happening, that's a different story.
So did these releases happen after David Lammy said that he didn't enforce stringent checks?
Yeah, that's right. And you just had Vanessa Fraycon explaining how all those things work. So those checks obviously didn't work in this case. I think that you need an instant investigation to find out why it happened at Wandsworth. 2 prisoners being accidentally released so near to each other shows something is going wrong. But that's a different ballgame from the overall strategy being wrong. Stringent checks are in place. Let's see if they're working.
Right, OK, so we got there in the end. So we've accepted that David Lammy ultimately is responsible. The buck stops with him. We know that he enforced or created, quote, stringent checks. We know that we've had released prisoners accidentally in error since then, but still, you think he should still be in position. Oh, I do like a bit of accountability. Nigel Nelson, thank you for your insight. Goodness gracious me, ladies and gents. What do you even say to that? Phil, he says, Michelle, I served in the prison service for 37 years. I've now retired. He says he wants to make a point, and I've got to tell you, Phil, I think it's a good one. He says prisoners are not released by accident. They are released in error. That is more serious sounding because it is. He then talks to me just about how there's been tweaks and changes in terms of the seniority of the levels of staff that are working on some of these things. I think you make a very good point because we're talking about, oh, an accident here and an accident there. I'm telling you now, you might have a convicted criminal in your shed, in your back garden, not 1, but 2 released accidentally. Manhunts underway. The conversation continues after the break. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Join me, Nana Akwe.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, Leila Cunningham and Martin Abrams. Helen, one of my viewers, says, Michelle, can you imagine if all of this had happened when the Tories were running the show? Can you imagine what Labour would have been saying? I've got to tell you, and I do need to make this point, this accidental or releasing prisoners in error, whatever word we want to use, it's not a new thing, by the way. This isn't just like two has happened and then last week and that's the first time it's ever happened. This has happened way too frequently, if you ask me. Leila Cunningham, your thoughts?
Did Nigel actually say that Lammy couldn't state that another prisoner had been released because he was concerned about the police investigation? For God's sake, how about being concerned about the public safety? How about telling us that there's a prisoner on the loose? They're always closing ranks to protect themselves. And then Nigel actually said, oh, yeah, he did introduce stringent controls. Let's see if it works. It's clearly not working 2 days after, and two people have been released. How many more have to be released for us to realise that it's not working? And listen, Michelle, I think what really is lacking, again, I'm going to say, is about leadership, because Lammy's reliance on we inherited this mess and the Labour in general, it doesn't reassure voters. It doesn't make us feel safe. A strong government is one that admits it made a mistake, communicates clearly, but a weak one just apologises and hides behind excuses. We want someone who'll be like, oh my God, share our fears and our distress and be like, he's been released, I'm going to go out there and we're going to find him. And I want to see him out there with them trying to find him.
Christine, one of my viewers, says, Michelle, why can't we stop this ridiculous notion of needing to build more prisons? She says, we don't. What we need to do is get rid of the foreign criminals who should be returned to their countries of origin.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
And you're right. Foreign criminals should be deported automatically. Right now, the Borders Act means that you can only be deported if you get a 12-month sentence. We are sitting ducks. We can only deport them once they've committed a crime. I want to see the Borders Act say that if you enter this country illegally, which is a crime, then it's automatic deportation. I don't have to wait for someone to be raped or killed for someone to be deported.
Layla, what about if the victims want them to serve their sentence?
I'm sure the victims, and they can serve their sentence abroad.
But they might not.
I'm sure the victims don't want them out.
There's no guarantee of that. They might just be
just
be sent back to their country of origin, and they'll just be allowed to live a life of liberty. Surely, if they've committed a crime, and the victim of that crime is like, I want this person to serve their sentence, do their time, for committing the crime, then they should do that.
Because you know what happens with that? They get a sentence and they get early release and they're back on our streets and they recommit a crime, as we've seen.
Well,
we don't have the prison space to accommodate all the foreign immigrants that are coming here and committing crimes. The number of sexual assaults has gone up massively by the 5 top numbers that are crossing the boats. We don't have the prison space for that. I think people would rather that we don't have illegal criminals in our shores and we ship them off.
Well, I think the victims of any crime need to be centred in this, personally, because not all victims would want their perpetrators just to be sent off back to where their country of origin.
No, they want them roaming the streets in a year.
No, they want them to serve their sentence. And in the most serious cases, obviously, then to be deported back to their country of origin. I think what we're also missing here, in terms of the prisoner and justice system, which we've not mentioned tonight, is that over the last 30 years, there's been a massive increase in the privatisation of our prison system. 14 out of the 165 prisons, or however many there are now run by private organisations like Serco. That is a disgrace, OK? A lot of these private companies have got track records of, having horrific conditions. Again, their workers not treated very well. We need to end the privatisation of our prison system. We need to give prison officers the right to strike. We need to build more prisons. We need to fund our prisoner and justice system properly.
Well, there you go. You will have strong opinions on that. Before I go, because I've only got a few seconds left, I just do want to get the faces of these 2 wrong-uns up, if I may, please, because after all, I do want to return the focus to the core point today. Not just 1, but 2 convicted criminals have been accidentally or released in error from Wandsworth Prison. 2 of them, absolutely pathetic, this is, ladies and gents. Here we go. This is one of them, and I want to show you the second one as well. That first one there, Barim Kandor Sharif. This next one is William Billy Smith. I mean, keep your eyes and your kind of ears peeled for these 2. One of them was released on Wednesday, the 29th of October. I will remind you, it's the 5th of November today, ladies and gents. I mean, wherever that fella is now, he's at a well head start. He's probably in Skegness or something by this point. Anyway, look, keep your eyes peeled, check your sheds. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks to my panel. Thanks to you. I'll see you tomorrow. What a clown world we live in.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It is very mild out there for bonfire night. Clear spells, yes, but some showery rain, increasingly so by dawn. However,